Okay, so almost half of this country now knows somebody who's been impacted by the federal job cuts this year, which is kind of surprising to think about because how many people actually hold federal jobs in this country? If you think about it, what's the number? By percent, it's 1.8%. Less than 2% of people actually have federal jobs. But if you consider, like, how many people do you know? How many people does the average person know? At least 100. If you count your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, your acquaintances, your friends, count all those people up, you know over 100 people. Now, depending on who you are, you can look at this two completely different ways. There are people that look at this as a great thing. This is amazing. It's the best thing that has happened in a long time. I was talking to one federal worker. Their family was being very supportive because they were being pushed out of their agency. Being very supportive with the whole process, but as soon as that person was gone from their agency, family members looked them in the eye and said, "Hey, listen, I'm glad that I'm sorry that you were in pain, but I'm glad you're finally out because you can get a real job now." Right? Because public sector job wasn't considered real according to this individual's family. But if you're working in a corporation, if you're working towards driving profit up, then they look at it as a real job. So different people look at it differently, depending on your ideology. Now, according to a recent poll, we had over 6,000 people take this poll. 43% of Americans, they're supportive of what the Trump administration is doing with these job cuts, with shrinking the federal government. 51% objected. They said, "Hey, we don't like it." So it's a majority, but a slim majority that do not like it. And these numbers really haven't moved much. They did the same poll, I believe, in March or in the springtime, and the numbers are basically the same. So cutting the government, to a lot of people, it's a fine plan. But the majority of the people that were polled, they have a major issue if you touch one of their favorite agencies, one of the agencies that they feel their community depends upon. And if you want to know what those agencies are, there's about 4 main ones, right? So you have DOD, that's a big one, FEMA, CDC, and NIH. Why is that? Department of Defense is pretty easy to understand. We see what's happening with Ukraine and Russia fighting, thousands of people dying. We see what's happening in the Middle East. All that is generating fear. So we have a healthy appetite for the defense budget, over $1 trillion, and probably only going to get larger every year that passes. So we're okay with that. It makes us feel safe. All these military bases all over the place, it makes us feel safe. But there's another part to it with Department of Defense. DOD, defense spending, is supporting over 3 million jobs. It's not just the federal worker that works in DOD. It's not just the contractor, but there are other businesses that are built around the DOD and the warfighter that benefit. So if DOD were to take a hit, so many communities across this country would see their local economies dwindle down, and it would impact them largely. You have some small towns, the military base is the main economic engine keeping that little dinky town alive. And without it, what are we talking about? Maybe a Walmart. Maybe Walmart would have to pack up and move out of there. Next, you have FEMA. This is fear-based as well. Natural disasters, wildfires, floods, hurricanes. Now, FEMA, they're not boots on the ground, but they control the money. They do the coordination. They coordinate between resources. Now, there's talk of getting rid of FEMA completely and giving the money directly to the states. That hasn't happened yet. So when we're in the middle of a hurricane season, or if we're in the middle of wildfire season, communities start to think about it. They don't want to have FEMA dismantled, at least not without a plan. Then we have NIH. So why NIH? You could think medical breakthroughs, but that's not really it. NIH is responsible for about $100 billion in our economy. That's a lot. They are directly supporting about 400,000 jobs. Not talking about federal workers. We're talking about grants. There are grants that go out to universities, medical centers, That's funding jobs. That's funding research scientists, administrative jobs that support the scientists. That's a lot of money. So when people say, hey, we want to reduce the government, it's not just federal workers. Some people think about it as, oh, it's just federal workers. Yeah, let's get rid of federal workers. Federal workers, probably the smallest bucket, because after that you have contractors. And for every federal worker, you have 2 or 3 contractors. That's taxpayer dollars that are going there to provide them a salary to give the company overhead expenses over that job. Then you have universities, you have medical centers. We just talked about it, research scientists. Then, not just that, local government. How many federal dollars are flowing to states like California, New York, Texas? That money ends up funding a position that otherwise would not be able to be funded. And then think about the restaurants, the small businesses, the dry cleaners that are around that whole ecosystem. Everyone takes a hit. Now, this might be a huge reason why the Trump administration currently does not want to release the job report for October. Maybe they end up doing it. It doesn't look likely. What we're talking about, all these jobs, we're talking about numbers north of 12 million jobs. So when that hits a job report, it's going to look really negative. Now, the strange part in all of this is even though Americans, they do not want certain agencies cut, and people have an understanding of the impact that the federal purge has had on the federal workforce, still, right now, we have satisfaction with federal services hitting a 19-year high. You heard that right. The people are satisfied now more so than the last 2 decades with how the government services are being provided. Why is that? I think the main reason for that is people have not been directly impacted by the cuts that we've seen so far. It's going to take some time. The tipping point could be 2026 when the services are delayed. Let's take Social Security Administration, for example. That's a great one. SSA. They're operating currently at a historic low. They haven't been so poorly staffed in a long time. So right now we know there's a huge backlog. Let's say millions. It grows. It continues to grow. What else? Disability claims, right? 8 months plus. That number can grow as well. What if we get to a point where it takes years to hear about your disability claim? At that point, there's public outcry. There's public outrage. And that is when you see a surge, a hiring surge exists. We saw that exist within the Department of Homeland Security if you look at ICE. The country, the nation was in a crisis. Immigration was a huge problem. Public outcry, public outrage. And then you have a super surge within ICE. 50,000 people hired in a short period of time. The same can be said for any agency. If there is mission failure and public outcry, that is what causes hiring surges. I think in 2026, we see a lot more agencies that fall under that criteria. It's not just going to be ICE. There will be other ones. SSA is a prime candidate, but it could be others as well. The bottom line is people are realizing that these cuts are real, that they're impacting real people. So what happens next year? We could see a fresh wave of RIFs, reduction in forces, which means layoffs. That could hit in February. That could further reduce these agencies' ability to accomplish its mission. Right now, most agencies, they're understaffed. Okay, or what also could happen is the people that said, hey, let's drain the swamp, well, they get exactly what they voted for. Now, in addition to this, we have a heartbreaking story. You got a guy that, down on his luck, received a layoff notice, looking for another job. Then he gets rehired by the agency. So the way this whole thing played out is he was laid off, reinstated, and just 24 hours later, laid off once again. You wouldn't believe it. You couldn't make this type of stuff up, but it's happening to a lot of people. Not just one, not just a dozen, a lot more than that. So if you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.